M.R.Dixit from IIM. He is the chairperson as well as the moderator. As Chagi kiddingly said, he can tell others when to stop, and he wittingly added, if they do. So, we'll see how the panel discussion goes. We have Amit Gohil from TIE. Everybody knows about TIE organization. Our attempt is to get people who are very active in the Ahmedabad ecosystem, not necessarily everybody. People who are active in the Ahmedabad ecosystem to come here and sort of think amongst ourselves as to what have we done right and what we could do more to make Ahmedabad a much better ecosystem for and hub for entrepreneurs. We have Mihir Joshi. He is the president of Gujarat Venture Finance. He comes from the finance and venture capital industry. We have known Mihir for a very, very long time. Paresh Vora is coming from Venture Studio. Venture Studio has been one of the partners of this support partners of this organization, of this event. Priyanka Chopra, she is coming from IIM-Incubators, CIIE. We have Anupam, who is, of course, doesn't need any introduction as far as you people are concerned. You know he is from Icreate. He's coming. We are going to have Hiranmay. How do you say? Hiranmay.
In Gujarat, people say Hiranmay.
Hiranmay. He's Hiranmay. Is M-A-Y-M-Y-M-A-Y. Anyway, Chaudhary, everybody knows him also, probably. He represents eCharge, and I have known him from the early days of German University.
Yes.
And so we have interacted with almost everybody on an ongoing basis, and we expect a very fun, interesting session.
Interesting discussion on Ahmedabad as a startup hub. So how it will unfold, we don't know. Much depends upon the contributions from the panel members. Since I am from Ahmedabad, my task doesn't begin unless I take a quiz. So let me start with the quiz. Okay. Now, is anything wrong with the statement? So I've taken Icreate, but how many of you find that something is wrong with the statement? Just voice vote. Raise your hands. Something is wrong? Yeah. Something is wrong? So I create. Something really wrong, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So now it depends upon the lens you are wearing. So if I take on the lens of an English teacher, so what should the English teacher do? So English teacher would strike out that yes and correct it. Is this correction right? Yes, this correction is right because it makes sense. I create when I create. But what would an entrepreneur do? What would an entrepreneur do? Entrepreneur would replace I by I. Then he says, I create when I creates. Does the sentence make sense? Is the English teacher happy? Very, very happy because I don't make any mistakes. So I create when I create. In fact, the whole spirit of being in a startup hub is having eyes all around and creating things which are helpful. Therefore, I look at this I from a different perspective because I create only when my I creates. That I looks for opportunities for investing my resources. It looks at the imbalance between what is dreamt and what is actual, what is desired and what's actual, and it tries to find a solution to that imbalance. So entrepreneurship is all about what we call imbalance resolution. Either there is excess supply or there is excess demand, we resolve that and then create our offers. And it also searches for support needed to make investment happen. One is I have a resource. So whether it is money or time or infrastructure or my knowledge base, and that resource is looking for an investment. And not all is available with me. There are several things which are available with others. That I searches for that opportunity. If I'm a startup, I look around and then search for opportunities. And it also creates opportunities for others. Because I also look for people who are looking for me as an opportunity. See, entrepreneur is both an opportunity for others and is also a demander. Now then what happens? Therefore I create when I creates. In fact, tomorrow if you find the logo of Icreate changing to say I create when I create, the IPR belongs to me. Now, before I go ahead and hand over the panel to the panel members, let's remember this gentleman. This gentleman's name is Ranchod Lal Chota Lal. So he is neither Ranchod nor Chota. Okay, but he is still called Ranchod Lal Chota Lal. So who could this gentleman be? Brahmin looking? Yeah, Brahmin looking. Therefore, quite unlikely that he is an entrepreneur. So he must be a teacher somewhere. A teacher or an entrepreneur?
He's an entrepreneur who built the first textile mill.
First textile mill. So he gets all the credit. So here is the guy. He came on the entrepreneur scene of IIM-Ahmedabad, or for that matter, Ahmedabad as a district, when we had not heard of any of these terms. So all these terms are the coinage of the IT world. There is a startup, there is a venture capital, there is an angel capital, there is private equity, there is an ecosystem. None of these terms were coined at that time. And that the terms were not coined does not mean that entrepreneurship should not take place. So entrepreneurship did take place, and he is the pioneering entrepreneur in Ahmedabad. So in a way, Ahmedabad was already a startup hub. So he started this enterprise, the first textile mill in this part of the world. Of course, the very first textile mill came in Bombay in 1854, and he set up the first textile mill in Ahmedabad, 1861, while the plan was to build it as early as 1847. And he set up the first mill called Ahmedabad Spinning and Weaving Mill, May 30th, 1981, and financing came from the Ahmedabad merchants who used to sell cotton. So we sold cotton, we sold silk, we made a lot of money, and those kind of people financed it. And he moved ahead and then created one resurrected enterprise called Gujarat College, it is 1890 or so. And then he set up this RC Technical Institute, and both are there. But Ahmedabad cotton mills, I don't know whether it is there. And then this concept of acceleration of the enterprise came in. In fact, there was a startup, and everybody said that Ahmedabad was not the right place for setting up the textile mill, because cotton was of mediocre quality, and we did not have a railway station then. Port was far away, and getting machinery would have been a problem. But still, he went ahead. He still went ahead and made it. And this gentleman is an accelerator. He did not set up just one mill, he set up 5 mills and many more. So that's how, long ago, Ahmedabad began as a startup hub and created the base for the textile industry in this part, of course, in collaboration with the activities in Bombay. Now, then Ahmedabad became the Manchester of the East. So after Ahmedabad became the Manchester of the East, Manchester lost its luster. So Manchester did not take off in the way it should take off later. And of course, Ahmedabad also did not take off in the way it should take off as far as the textile was concerned. And then what happened? Then it provided a base for the next opportunity. In fact, if I am in textile, there are opportunities to create enterprises around machinery, enterprises around chemicals, enterprises around financial services, enterprises around managing enterprises. So we became the next hub for chemical industry. Did not take off in a big way because chemical industry moved to Baroda, from Baroda it moved to Bharuch, Bharuch it moves to Ankleshwar. And then textile machinery. Textile machinery industry did not take off at all because of several competing difficulties. Then came the facility for pharmaceutical business. So way back in 1951, somebody said, you know, if a multinational can make pharmaceutical products and sell, why can't I? So that's how the Patel-Modi combination came in. they created Cadila, and that created the base for building the pharmaceutical industry. So we have in Ahmedabad right now Intas, Sun Pharma, then the Zydus, Cadila split, Torrent. At some point in time, Torrent was called Turant Company. They used to focus on speed with which they brought the products to the marketplace. Then there are very interesting opportunities created in Ahmedabad for food. See, like example, Vadilal ice cream. Anybody had Vadilal ice cream already? So way back in 1907, because then Hamor, way back in 1947, very good interesting ventures. And then with Manik Chowk, if you go to Manik Chowk, in fact, those were also the days when interesting things like Silicon Valley of the country, those terms are not coined. But Manik Chowk was the base for sweets. So that's how two interesting sweet companies came in, Tandoori Sweets and then Lenin. And after Manik Chowk, the next Silicon Valley of Ahmedabad was Law Garden. They paid the payment of Law Garden, which gave rise to Honest. So these are all enterprises which thrived because at some point in time, Ahmedabad reflected certain useful characteristics of being a startup hub. Now, of course, we have several missed opportunities. We missed opportunities in design and fashion. And we were called the Manchester of the East, but we are not called the Milan of the East. But all high fashion is there. And similarly, we missed opportunities in financial services. Like we are not called the New York of the East or anything. So we missed opportunities in IT hardware. In fact, Lenovo is what it is because a lot of interesting things happened in China. So we missed that. We are not called Beijing of this part of the world. So there are several missed opportunities. That there are missed opportunities brings us back to this panel discussion as to whether Ahmedabad can come back and be the startup hub again, or should we reinvent certain aspects which created enterprises here and move forward. Now that is where I hand over the podium to the panel. What we'll do is, first we'll voice our concerns. So when I look at Ahmedabad as a startup hub, I have two images. Image number one is it becomes a school for startups. In fact, people are from all over the world come here and then initiate certain things and graduate. And some may decide to stay back, graduate, move there, and create this whole new startup movement. But the other image that comes in is all those who want to work and experience the joy of being a part of the startup also come to Ahmedabad. So therefore you are not only an employment provider, but you are also a magnet for attracting talent. So we talked about venture capitalism. Like that was what I was discussing with them. There's also a possibility for calling venture talentism, where talent comes in and there's a match between the startup and the talent. The startup starts, stabilizes, scales up, and again, a decision point to scale up further or to sell off. So I invite the first panelist who would like to start.
So, questions?
Yeah, we'll definitely take 5 questions from you. And these 5 questions will create the context to relate to. And each panel member will have between 5 and 7 minutes. And after the panel member has made his statement, we'll have 1 question from you and 1 comment from the panel. So depending upon how we move, towards the end we'll have an open house. Is it fine? Yeah, so 5 questions.
First of all, thank you, Icreate, for creating, an initiative like this, so that the startups can hire, retaining talent, finding the talent is one of the biggest challenges we face, throughout the year. Now, I started my entrepreneurship journey about 3 years back. Now, before this discussion begins, to everyone, right? Are we, trying to differentiate, entrepreneurship, call it separate from startups, or are we trying to hold them in together?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That is one very important.
Is every entrepreneurial initiative a startup initiative?
Right. And second thing also, maybe
can we give a chance to we have only 5 questions.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, so we'll come back. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
We all discussed many times that how do we connect? Now this is a platform where startup fair is the ecosystem, the incubators together connect. So how do we take it forward? Does it stay at the discussion level, or we actually combine and take it to the next level?
Okay. Is there action component in this? Yeah, how about you? No is not.
This is some 50,000 engineers come up, but how many do this company hire, and what are they going to reap out?
Okay, so do you get the right one? So how about you?
Yeah, traditionally Gujarat and Ahmedabad is traditionally known for its family business, and Gujarat is famous for that. There is family business everywhere. So, is it helpful in the entrepreneur or the startup environment, or whether it is a deterrent or a what do you call it? Well, it brings down the entrepreneur or the startup spirit in a young person who has his own family business.
Yeah, family business, an accelerator or a dampener? Okay.
I would like to ask the developing angel network in Ahmedabad, and how far are we in having good set of angels who actually invest in companies out of Ahmedabad?
Yeah, are there angels or is it only a concept? That's the question, right? So in fact, there are 5 interesting questions, 5 or more. We'll come back. Okay. The first question is this whole concept of distinction between the entrepreneur and the startup entrepreneur. For example, is the entrepreneur always a startup entrepreneur, or is the entrepreneur gifted and therefore he doesn't have to worry about in the other question, that is what kind of a talent do I hire and is there a match? And the other issue is there action in startups or startup fairs? For example, is it at the academic level that we are trying to think of a match between what is required and what is provided for, or is it just an academic concept? Therefore, after 2 years, if we meet again, can we say that yes, we are able to help the startups get the kind of talent the startups wanted? And other, of course, is who becomes an entrepreneur? So, is family environment of business a constraint or a dampener? So, we have 5 good questions to get started with, and we have a wonderful panel which will answer all the questions. That means I don't have to answer any question. Okay.
Person with the first coming.
Yeah, alright. Hi, I'm Envisaging Gohil. One very important and good remark I think that person made, that Ahmedabad is basically a city, Gujarat, where this traditional and conventional business have thrived here. Alright, so we need to accept that fact that we being a state, alright, apart from the kind of appreciation we've got from the world over, we are now gearing up to that kind of a level, alright. Even when Silicon Valley was built, it was not a government initiated program, alright. It was basically an amalgamation of inputs of various individuals which got together, and then Silicon Valley, was created. So we always say that there's a lot of action happening in Bangalore, a lot of action happening in Bombay, Delhi, but trust me, they have equal number of challenges. Alright? We only see that these startups, these big names have come from there. Alright, but over there also they face equal number of challenges. Just that we as a ecosystem are still growing. Alright, and we are not yet matured. Alright, but yes, I would like to say that such kind of initiatives, such kind of collaborations is what will help Ahmedabad move quickly. Alright, we cannot work in silos anymore. Alright, to answer Manoj's question also, yes, a lot of discussion happening, and I think the discussion which is happening one day, alright, will get into action. You see, with the kind of demography that we live in, alright, it takes a little time, it's taking a little longer time, but I'm sure, alright, because here we have an incubator, we have a venture capitalist sitting here, we have academics, GTU and the university, we have eChat. So you see, informal gatherings are also equally important. What Jatin is doing is basically getting the people, like-minded people on a platform. Alright, then it's up to you guys where to go from. Okay, he's not there to actually, मतलब आप प्यासे को कुएं तक ले जा सकते हो, पानी तो आपको ही पीना पड़ेगा ना. So he is in fact trying to build that from ground level, Alright, and then there are these people who are there to actually fuel your growth and your aspirations. I mean, anybody would like to join me?
So some of the questions that difference between startup or entrepreneurship or entrepreneur, is it something after graduating become startup then become entrepreneur, or who should be entrepreneur or angel investor? Some question was asked. So let me try to touch upon each of the points maybe. So in India, generally what happens that socially we are just opening up. So startup and something generally from social circle is look like that if you don't get into a job or here you don't get job. So you think that one need to do on his own and other things. It's also one of the options. The second thing is many times, and now for last 3-4 years I see the change in the people mind that I want to create my own. So that requires patience, that requires a real strategic decision one need to take, and if family support, then it makes a difference. Third category could be the people who are in job. They don't feel good in their job and other things. I will tell you one person who has been doing job, electronics and communication engineer. Because of relationship, he visited my home, he and his wife. He asked me a question that I wanted to be entrepreneur, tell me how I should go about it. Then he told about 3 or 4 some stupid ideas. Because sometimes when you talk about one idea patiently, then one understands that you are really wanted to go about it. But if you try talking about one idea, second idea, third idea, fourth idea, then somewhere I read that he is nowhere. Then I asked a simple question that why do you want to get into entrepreneurship? He said, I don't want to do job. That's fine. So this thought about entrepreneurship comes every day in your mind, or it generally comes on Monday and Tuesday and it goes away on Friday, Saturday. So his wife, he did not answer, but his wife answered. That only Saturday and Sunday he forgets. Then Monday again he came back to the mood that I wanted to do on my own. So it generally does not. But good thing is, entrepreneurship is now very well accepted from a society point of view, from friends, social circle and other things. That is a good sign. The second thing is, okay, when we wanted to get into a business or a startup, some idea and other things. So before 5 years we never had, means always when you put a seed and put up the business plan, then you talk about that I need a capital, I need this real estate, I will need this kind of people and other things and all those stuff. So nowadays the changes happen and it is visible. So because of the huge technology revolutions and other around, you can cut the cost of starting a company, you can outsource many of the things, you can buy the ready product, you can collaborate with many of the technology companies to help and build around the product for some stock option and other things. There are many people around, and I think in last 2 days you also observed that the people wanted to join the startup and work for the company, and nowadays you are not required to have a great office and other things. You can just, and which is the case in Silicon Valley as well. We saw many of the companies just building out of the garages. So I think nowadays you can cut around the cost. Many of the offices can go in virtual mode. The setting of the cloud server, computer and other things now is fast. You can just move on cloud and do the stuff. So setting the starting cost nowadays is minimal, and as an entrepreneur we think that we need to have capital. Where do we find? But it is equally true that many of the VCs and angel investors are around and they are in search of startup and they always feel challenged where do we find good deals. So a good part about Ahmedabad now is enough number of incubators. I think the number will go more. But it's not question of the numbers, it is a question of the quality. I think Icreate is doing fantastic job and there are other incubators as well. So a good part of incubator is they create ecosystem wherein there are mentors available, there are startup available, the same time, so like for example, a venture capital need, so as an entrepreneur you think that you need VC, where do you go? But at the same time, VC also thinks, I need good startup, where do I go? So I think this incubation centers become a good meeting point. And believe me, if we create good startup ecosystem, forget about me. As a venture capital company, we are just starting a startup fund. So we always feel that if so the first question I made is how many startups are there? So because these companies become a raw material for us and some of the great opportunities, and we always believe that can we create a great companies out of Ahmedabad, and if we do that, believe me, many of the VCs not from India across the world will keep on coming here, and I think we will make it.
Any quick
Hi, I'm Priyanka from CIIE. All great points made by. I just wanted to add one more thing, to the question on who is an entrepreneur. We were discussing this in the meeting room outside. These days, looking at the success of Flipkart, Snapdeal, Paytm, those are the poster boys of Indian entrepreneurship. So we think that, the fallacy amongst a lot of our youth is that entrepreneurship is about maximizing valuation. That is not entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is about creating and maximizing value. When you create and maximize value, valuation will be a byproduct. It may or it may not be. So at least the journey will be fulfilling. If you're chasing valuations, then your journey will be very, very frustrating. So that distinction needs to be very clear. If you have figured out the problem that you're solving, you're creating value for your consumer. And if you're doing that, then you're an entrepreneur.
Right, sir, Priyanka. So first of all, I'd like to address the first and last question. Let me combine the two. First question was, what is startup versus entrepreneur enterprise? What was that question?
That was not the question. The question was that, are we trying to differentiate or telling the startups apart from entrepreneurship? So I think everybody is very clear about what is a startup, what is entrepreneurship. The essence of the entire discussion today, very well lies about, are you calling entrepreneurship apart from startup or not? That is number one. There are more questions I'm going to follow. It's going to be a very interesting transition. But this is, the starting point.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good question. So, see, first of all, entrepreneurship is a superset, and startup is a subset, right? That we all know. Startup is when entrepreneurship starts, it goes into certain stages, or which we can have a lot of theories going around. So it takes a while for entrepreneurs to pick up. So in the initial stages, it is of course a startup. That is a very basic principle. But when we talk about startups, see, whatever limited understanding we all have here, because when I interacted with the companies here, I told them that your nascent ventures, your startups, how to differentiate yourself from these, let's say, existing kirana stores which have been existing since long back. See, the difference is about what are you doing, like what is the extent of innovation that you are bringing in whatever you are doing. So it's more innovativeness. Just simple trading, buying from somewhere, selling somewhere is also enterprise. That is also entrepreneurship. And nothing against it. It's wonderful, beautiful. You can do it. But when you say startup, you are starting something new. So we expect that if you are starting something new, the new is not because of its age, because of the concept, because of the innovation that you have, which has not happened before. So that is the kind of understanding. Of course, there's a very thin line in that understanding. I can, of course, float this side or this side. It's like cutting edge, So I understand. That is from my limited understanding about the startup versus enterprise, as you said. So we'll go on this conversation. And of course, talking about the action, Manasvi, I think you were talking about that. See, action is what we are seeing around today. So this is the best time to ask that question and also to answer that question. So what you see around is action. So we have around 25 to 26 companies listed here. I'm sorry to use the term. Nascent ventures listed here, which have got substantial number of queries. I believe at least 5 to 10, when I say queries, they are applications for either internship or employment, which these nascent ventures have got, which they were not easily getting otherwise. Am I right to say that? How many are with me? Anybody who thinks you got less than 2 people or 2 interns approaching them? Less than 2. Anybody? Anybody 5? More than 5?
nascent ventures have seen the students or prospective employees approaching them, and more than 5 of such. A lot of us, right? At least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So 13 in this room. May I speak? Do you need to speak next? So that is my submission. Thank you.
Paresh Vora. So, a few things about, Ankit sent a mail regarding this. He also mentioned, asking us to mention what services incubator. So, there are some questions. So, maybe I will mix up my comments. Is it audible? Am I audible? Yes. Okay. Yeah. So, I'll sort of mix up 2 topics. So, I think as a startup, and this is a Icreate or CIIE or Venture Studios, so it's a set of incubators, and we have others also in Ahmedabad. And it's important for the startups to also know how to get the maximum out of incubators, so that your progress is helped and you really achieve the growth you aim to within the time span which you need to. And from our perspective, from an early stage, I think it is important that you have a good sounding board for your idea. Your idea is put through a lot of market or need discovery process, so that you really graduate to a mature concept, and then of course you do a good networking in terms of getting access to mentors, coaches, investing agencies, and a continuous sounding board in terms of continuously seeing that all your actions somebody else sees, or a set of people see and evaluate. And that's the difference people mentioned about family business versus entrepreneurship versus startups. And of course, many of the startups in Ahmedabad, the promoters will come from families which have their own business. To have a backup, to have a sort of access to incubators or coaches and all is useful, because you come out of the world of family business protection, which that offers. That of course offers you a backup, but it's better that you don't use the backup at the stage when you are really doing your creative part. It is better for independent people to look at it and network more and more outside of that family set of contacts or contacts which the family business has. Because then you look at things in a more creative way, and that's what I think from an incubation perspective you should look at, the startup should look at in terms of increasing access to the network. Because in that, and the important part of the startup, when why do we call something startup versus entrepreneur, he has also done. And a good example sometimes given is between a baby and a dwarf. So people give birth to a baby, not a dwarf. A dwarf is somebody who can create income from day one. The dwarf could be an earning member of the family, but doesn't grow. A baby is somebody who has to be nurtured for 15-20 years. Of course, a startup doesn't take 15-20 years, probably 15-20 months. And then it grows and earns some revenue. So it needs to be nurtured, but it can grow much more. And that is where the innovation, your innovation skills, your creative skills are put to test, and your scaling skills are put to test. And that is where you need network, but you yourself also have to work hard. And the good part, as you see here, is that at least in Ahmedabad, we find that the ecosystem members work together. So it's okay for you to approach any incubator or any even organizations like IIM, because they also create a great platform where people can interact and make the maximum out of it, and then put your effort. So I think that is where the ecosystem can help a lot, and the entrepreneurs then have to do their job. And I think if you do all of that, then Ahmedabad can become a great place. And the important part, of course, for startups is also to contribute back. As you become more mature, you should contribute back and help others who are still coming up. And anybody who has done so realizes that while helping other startups, they learn much more in the process. Their maturity also increases and their results in the market increases. So it's true that comment. I'll hand over to Jatin.
Any question on this?
Any questions?
Only one question we'll take per panelist, then come back. Yeah.
Can we have a single dedicated web-based platform to host all the information about the startup and startup ecosystem? Like startup can list their ventures on that platform, then VCs and angels information also can be uploaded, or student aspirants also can. Everybody can have access to this information, which can be helpful to everybody.
It's kind of an exchange
of the information.
Already exists in IIM.
Some part of it already exists. So some is being created. I think TIE is trying to lead an effort to create a platform where startups and other players can be listed. There are social media groups like Jatin runs some of them. There is something called Ahmedabad Startup Community, where if you post things, where you list questions, people do answer back.
5,000 members. So if you go to Facebook group member list, you get all these 5,000 startups. Out of those 5,000, probably 2,000 would be from Ahmedabad. So that already exists, probably.
So he gets the mic already.
Okay. I'm Jatin. So I'm more of a salesman and teacher. So I know the topic is around. I'll come back to some of the answers. That's kind of my opinion for some of the questions that we will put forward. So what should be the ideal hub? So ideally, then that's what I believe after working since last 6 years and based on my experience. Then there has to be there are 6 broader things that should happen in ideal hub. So generally, if you see most of the discussion, generally it's all geared for superstars. Like not every company is going to be fundable. So of course there are a lot of things should happen on that particular 10% or 20% of the people. But if you really see that most of the discussion, so that is more important because that will drive others also. But ideally, when we talk about larger picture, that the hub. So ideally, what like a community. There has to be a community, like, and that's what in Ahmedabad now there is a huge vibrant community. Like Icreate is doing great initiative to put for bring a lot of people together. Rhythm did a program where a lot of other communities were recognized. So now in Ahmedabad, you go to any community, you'll discover other people. So it doesn't end there. So probably community is there, but in community there has to be have a space for all the people, not just for superstars. So like probably 10% of the startups are very successful and looks very glamorous, but there are going to be a lot of people which are not going to be great successful people. There are always remain those 2 people, 3 people company always struggling, and probably 5 years, 10 years, and then they might make it big. But there has to be a space for them. Now a lot of people they are so shy because all this discussion about superstars, people talk about investments. So a lot of those people don't feel like going out and share about them. And that's why probably a lot of in Ahmedabad I would believe that there are 10,000 people outside of this group who could be termed as a startup in a typical way of big tech ecosystem will describe. I can give those lists of 10,000 people. But just that they will not come out because they will be so shy because there are not going to be space. So they will wait for them to elevate to the next level as per the industry standard. That's what people talk about. So if there is a community, there has to be space for all kinds of people, not just for superstars. Second thing should happen is on skill building. So generally that's what I believe. There are 2 skills that you should be very, very good at. A, specific to your business domain. If I'm building a startup around healthcare, I should be aware about what is healthcare. So my entire knowledge should not be dependent on one very popular mentor that I had asked. I should be aware about what is happening in global. So generally, you should not be able to follow trends only. You should be able to predict trends. If you are in that stage, not everyone is going to be on that level, but that is the direction that we should be. So a lot of things should happen around the skill building. A, specific to your business domain, and B, skills very interpersonal. How do you like? So talent is a problem that most of the people face. But there has to be interpersonal skill. You should be very good at team building. You should be very good at communication. You should be very good at sales. So there are a lot of skills. Even if you are not an entrepreneur, you are a professional. You should be very good at that. So a lot of things should happen around that. So if there is a hub has a space for all the people. The community is there. The skill building, a lot of things happen around skill building. And this is where the problem of talent will. So if I am looking for a designer, But if there is no specific initiative on asking people to be so great at user experiences or so good at programming, how will I find the talent? So a lot of things should happen on skill building. The third thing is infrastructure, and probably in Ahmedabad there is a lot of accelerators are coming, a lot of co-working spaces are coming up in Ahmedabad. So space, if I am starting a company, so for IT it's little easy, I can operate from home. But there has to be a lot of initiatives happen around infrastructure. Now what happens is I am ready to support you as a young entrepreneur, but there are certain conditions that I have. So there has to be open spaces, not just to hang out, but you can professionally work. How can we create that? That's a different thing altogether. But if you are looking for to create a hub should have all those things. The fourth thing, very important, is should be able to collaborate and get customers. So if I don't get investment, but if I get a customer, that would really go a long way, because even if I have investment, I need to find those customers. So if there is a hub, I am starting an enterprise mobility company. If there is a hub will take me to the customer, enterprise customer, not will convince the enterprise customer to buy my products, but I should be able to get to those early adopters. So how many of you have mobile apps? How many of you? And how many of you have 10,000 downloads? And since when all of you are running this enterprise? So just imagine, Ahmedabad has almost 50,000 people who know the startup thing. So there are a lot of people who don't know about startups, but there are 50,000 people who would know about a tech thing. So ideally, all these 50,000 people, if they become early adopters, that would be, so something should happen on those lines. We should become a first customer. So all of us use Facebook, are we the first 100 users of Facebook? Or we can be the first 100 users of any interesting startup that is coming up. So most of the people, they recognize someone when they get featured in Economic Times. Someone goes and tells what can you share about my startup? People will not do it. But if my article is featured in Economic Times, everyone will share, because there's a human tendency. I would want to get connected with someone which is getting very successful. So there has to be a lot of things around early adopters. So why can't we as Ahmedabad become that system where an app gets launched, 10,000 people download it. So you don't do it out of charity. You do it, you monitor and give them the feedback. If you don't like those products, don't use it, uninstall it. But we should become, if we do that, and that's what happens all across. If you study not just Silicon Valley, you study Israel, you study Singapore, any other place, at the end of the day, something around those lines will come up. Can we get to early adopters? Can we get to the customers? And the fifth part is a global perspective. Generally, there are going to be startups which will have a global audience. But there are going to be a lot of companies which will not have a global audience. But you should be aware about what is happening in the world. Which are the things that affect my life? Like science affects my life. Today I don't know, but probably tomorrow that thing will affect. So ideally, there has to be something around excellence. So for most of the people, their knowledge revolves around the popular people that they follow. So that is not a bad thing to do actually. That's a great beginning. But ideally, there are broadly 20-30 categories in the world. Science, cinema, politics. So ideally, if you say that I'm an entrepreneur, so entrepreneur is supposed to be a little smart guy, because a smart guy could identify a problem and is building a solution. So something should happen around that perspective, that you should have a global perspective, and probably all of us have traveled a lot. If you, all the organizations have a global appeal. So something should happen in those lines. So if I am starting a startup in Ahmedabad, and probably my startup has a global appeal, so why can't I get 10,000 people from Israel to download my product, or get my product exposed to those 10,000 people? So something should happen around those lines. And the fifth and the sixth very important one is around finances. So if there is a accelerator, then accelerator or incubator will have a certain way of working. But ideally, when it's a hub, when it's a great world-class hub, it should be able to solve problems at finances on two levels. The first level is around, I want to do this business, so I want to raise 5 lakh rupees, 10 lakh rupees, or a crore. Another would be a lot of entrepreneurs face a lot of problems. Right now, at the end of the month, there is a crunch of 10,000, 20,000. So my payment is coming, so there is a problem. So it becomes very, very, on one day, you are all over the world, and suddenly you ask your friend, can you give me those 10,000 rupees, because I have a bill to pay, because my payment is getting delayed. So if there is an ecosystem, there is a support system. As a support system, we should be able to solve it. At least if we are not able to solve it, we should think about that. And then only we could become a great ideal ecosystem. So probably something should happen in those lines. So that's it. And probably the good thing in Ahmedabad is that if you see a lot of initiatives, we are in that direction. Probably in community part, we are almost there. Probably in finances part, a lot of initiatives that TIE has taken up, Venture Studios putting up with Ahmedabad Venture Alliance, Icreate. So something should happen in those lines. And so probably that kind of answers. A lot of people are already working. So GTU is partnered with a lot of other interesting initiatives. So sometimes what happens, so I'll just put forward a very small question. How many of you know that Icreate is a wonderful program, but your friend doesn't know about it? Anyone? Like you believe that this program was amazing, you participated in this program, but you know a lot of other your friends who didn't know about it. Okay, so a lot of people. So did you tell your friends that this program is happening? Sure. So a lot of people don't do that. So generally you go to these events, people would say, you know what, Ahmedabad, like a lot of people get surprised. If you do a Google startups in Ahmedabad, everything will come to know. There has to be a better system of getting that information displayed. But if you just do a simply Google, you'll get all this interesting information. So that's the first part. Second part is if I know 20 guys who doesn't know about all these interesting organizations. So today I got to know about it. So probably tomorrow I should tell those 10 guys. And I can't just keep complaining the exact same thing again and again. That I know about these amazing things, but my friends don't know about it. So if your friends don't know about it, tell them. So that's when you become evangelist. So probably 200, like 500 people participate in startup fair. If all of you can take this message to 100 other people, so we did not wait for something else to happen. So this event is not just those 2 days. The energy that you do, you can translate it, and the discussion that happens, the same panel discussion ideally should not happen, because you have got those points, you can translate those points. Or next time something happens, it could take those points to the next level. So as it will just same thing will happen everywhere. The people are really worried about it. So next time the audience will get all of us will be again discussing the same thing, because that's what we've been discussing a lot of it. So a lot of action has happened from this side. But from an audience side, if I tell you that there are 50,000 people, but do all those 50,000 people know about everyone? So if something should happen in that direction. So I'm not saying that that is not happening. But what I'm saying that something should happen. In some cases it would be 90%, in some cases it would be 20%. So that's how it should go properly. And so there is an interesting question that was about is family business a hindrance? So I don't have that kind of background, but I don't even have a family job. So in my family nobody has studied. So but in my case that really helped. But again, having a family business helps little bit better. Because if you ask a lot of entrepreneurs, so there would be something specific to your particular question thing, but in general I try to ask. A lot of entrepreneurs fail because of cash crunch. They are not able to figure it out. And they try a lot and they put forward those 2 years, and somehow they don't have any other option to raise those 1 lakh rupees, 2 lakh rupees. So majority of the people will fail around that. Of course, there are going to be other reasons that people fail because of their ideas wasn't there, they didn't get early customers, or a lot of other reasons. But finance is a huge problem. So if you have family business, of course you'll have a lot of other problems that typically I will not have. But probably that part is little taken care of. I'm not saying that all fathers will give money to you, but that is a slightly advantage. But disadvantage is that people will judge you based on your earlier business. So that's a disadvantage. But if you say the first and foremost, the biggest problem is the finances. So that is slightly taken care of in that context. So a lot of things from you can clap if I've said good.
Are there students here?
We are talking about hub. I completely agree with you that early consumption has to be driven. For example, we just did an India Beta and we are getting more traction from Bangalore. We are marketing that what we are getting from Ahmedabad. So, as a hub, there are 2 things which any hub does, not only about startups, or any hub does is that one, are we innovating? Asking ourselves. And second, are we taking risk right from the startup stage to say from a point of view of an investor? So those 2 things always remain a question mark when we talk about Ahmedabad. Are people innovating? Second, are people taking risk?
Yes. So for an example, if we today decide that let's do a project that we highlight the 1,000 innovative companies from Ahmedabad. So probably to 400, 500 top notch. Like you can compare with a lot of probably not that's what the new word has come up in startup world, unicorns. So we can't have those unicorns, but very good, great examples of someone who is innovating. And that's where the global perspective and skills come into play. If I have a skill of good product development, something Aura gets created, and I know if I can predict the trend, then chances of me pulling up that great product which would have a global appeal would be very, very high. So probably having that global perspective. So that's when I don't follow the trend, but if I can predict the trend, and if I have the skill, if I have the talent, then probably chances of me doing that are very, very high.
Are there students here? Yeah. So I do a lot of volunteer work with the student startup ecosystem, and I will try to bring in a couple of points here. Joshi and other on this question. You know, one major thing probably we need to look at is how do we create strategy, institutions and processes both at macro and micro level, because by only doing things in micro level and not having a macro strategy, or only doing policy on white paper and not doing micro things will not go on. One fundamental thing that what I found out working with university startups are, people believe that entrepreneurship or startups is a new profession. I mean, that's the mistaken point to start with. It's not a mere new profession, it's more a culture. So how do you look out to embed them? It's more as a culture and less as a profession. It's the first challenge that systems need to look at. Second thing, when you create infrastructures, when you create processes, when you create networks, you have to cater the whole value chain. And probably the value chain in the Indian context will be absolutely different from Silicon Valley context. In Silicon Valley, probably you have to start with engines and all. But what I found out, most of the student ventures who are working in the dorms and colleges, they actually don't need a million. They need a couple of thousand, a lakh rupees to validate the prototype. And there is not a single penny available in this country to invest at that level. So if you let these 95% ideas get killed at that stage, you will only get those 5% ideas which anyone will survive. So if you really want disruption, if you really need heuristics, you need to have a strategy how to support them in terms of preserving them. Second, no examination. I mean, I will bring a university perspective. We drafted a policy by interacting with failed startups. We interacted with 100 failed startups, then they succeeded later on. Because probably when you design a strategy in entrepreneurship and startups, it's always a different profession altogether. In generally in management practice, you look at the successful cases and try to see this pipeline heuristics. But here probably you need to learn more from this guy who could not succeed driving the bus, but other than succeeding it. So we designed a policy where the student told us, we are 60% free in the college. Can we engage us? And we didn't realize what they're talking about. And the one guy told, one day when we designed this policy, they told, the real problem is you try to start when you are 24 plus. But by just preponing that car at 19 plus or 20 plus, you give a significant risk-taking capacity right in the systems in which their universities and colleges. By letting them fail once in the colleges, in dorms, or in family environment, you actually let them more risk-taking. But when you design this strategy, probably what we believe from copying from Silicon Valley model, we think that the guy is graduating out, you will put 2 years in an incubator and go to an accelerator and get a typical fund and get the car. Probably we need to look at whether it's going to work in India, because the 2 million graduates that our universities produce in state universities are in a different state than what Silicon Valley is looking now. Third, in terms of ecosystem, I think we take pride in collaborating things from outside. I mean, I will say, our collaboration with Boston University, I know a guy from somewhere else. But the problem is, I think it hardly matters in startup ecosystem how much you collaborate globally rather than how much you collaborate locally. Rather than competing locally and collaborate globally, I think we need to reverse the game altogether. To collaborate more locally and compete globally. I mean, if you start fooling yourself in the local ecosystem, probably you can't compete at the global stage. So the ordering process of that we need to look at could be a reverse game altogether. I mean, there is no necessity that, and there are a lot of things Silicon Valley has taught us, but then we can have something more in the car. I mean, if you look at the Silicon Valley's technology also, the people who change the game are not William Shockley or something. These are the guys who left out from William Shockley's lab, the traders 8, or maybe the paper mafia who create SpaceX and all these guys. Actually, the people who change the game are the people who have deviation capacity, not the generic people who follow a structured model of go to seed fund, go to angel fund, go to venture fund and do it. And in fact, in India, if you look at all the successful companies, hardly 5 to 10% of VC funded, so who cares? In fact, if you have a good product, like she mentioned, if you have a good value, people will pay for you. I mean, the biggest money that you can get from somebody is the customer's money. If you can get it done at that point of time, actually the thing will happen. But probably the real game starts to point what I'm talking about the university system is, when the guy is at 19 years, 20 or 21 years old, how do you seduce him to take risks? And secondly, how do you not only seduce him to take risks only for the common little business or something, how do you bring in a technology component to it? Because the next Zuckerberg is not going to make Facebook. The next guy who is going to be searching is not going to make Google style. So how do you teach them only one thing, that kind of adaptability, rather than giving the skills and all the parameters? Because if you give every skills, you give every information that they can acquire anyhow. But if you don't teach how they will survive, how they will adapt, that is something that the academics can't teach. So probably what I learned from experiments working with some 200 student ventures is, what they need is not the money in the beginning, but in the backing in the back, that what you are doing is worth it and just do it. Even if you fail, we don't care it. I'm going to seduce them at that level. Second thing is, probably we also need to have a different approach in different ecosystem. I mean, what experiment work in Kerala may not work in Gujarat. And what kind of top level patronage that we give to this entire movement is a significant point of view. I mean, someday before when Chandrababu Naidu came down in Andhra Pradesh and in Visakhapatnam, he just started the board with 20 student benches and they told, look, if you are going to do this much, I am going to take you to 12 world. Do you have that kind of political willingness or policy patronage along with the ground movements? That is also going to play a very, very significant role. Fourth, the real reason what I look at from the students' perspective is, they have enough time in the campus to experiment. But are we encourage them? And for example, if you go to Olympic, you get a medal and you go to the specific criteria based upon UGC's recommendations now. If you are a very good dancer, you get something from School Mackie or something. When our system will appreciate the same kind of acknowledgement for an entrepreneur in the college, when we can create a new mindset when the innovators and entrepreneurs got a distinction like a sports guy and a cultural celebrated guy, can we create a different benchmarking parameter for success? So I think this will be a hard question that we need to look at. This will need an altogether different approach. Secondly, probably we are too much of looking at the success cases. And how do we look at the people who didn't make the success? And probably we can learn much more from them. I mean, it will be happy if you get 5 people who fail here and get in the panel and asking what actually you think could have been the mistaken part and can they could be the part of the Bible. And those are the kind of thing, I mean, learning only from success strategy may not work in that sense. And if you look at in this day, when somebody is in the college and somebody is trying at 19 and 20 call rather than 24 or 25 call, which is relevant in India because the recent data says that 35% guys are taking study loan and going through undergrad programs and all that. So if a guy is getting a study loan and going for undergrad program from 19 to 22, obviously you can't expect them to go for a 2-year incubation process and then do something else. He has a lot of social application. So how do you create strategy in a macro perspective so that you don't kill that risk-taking ability at that point, right? So can you integrate those incubation infrastructures in an Indianized manner? I call it Indus Valley model and a Silicon Valley model. How do you back integrate those processes so that the people can take a risk in a safe haven like college and dorms and something like that? So I mean, those are the questions that we experimented since last 2 years. We started a thing, and when we look at these 200-odd startups which came up in this ecosystem, we feel that probably we need to really question the unquestionable things. Probably we don't need to look at the perspective of what the great people have succeeded by now, but also to look at how the new great can be created. Because if we are trying to learn from either the people who have done great thing or people who have not done thing, probably will miss the bus. The real thing is how do you create great thing in the next call, because the same call will not come in the ecosystem call. And the last thing that I want to bring in is probably, it's the agility that the system need to maintain. I mean, you should not hesitate to share common resources at an extent, because in one extent, for example, Ahmedabad probably is a distinct city. Each you get one IIM, one IIT, one NID, one SEP, one GTU. You get the best institution, right? But the problem comes not that you're having the best. The problem is how do you co-create having the best? I mean, if a startup need a design input, can they have easily access an idea incubator? If somebody has an ICT or an accelerator, can they get it here? So how do you really look at from a system perspective that how do you create those incentives? And these things will not happen by goodwill. There needs also incentives to happen. And from where these incentives will come? The incentives will come from the macro perspective. So how do you really look at the entrepreneurship movement both from a grassroots movement and a system approach? I think those are going to play a very vital role. And secondly, probably we don't need to bother about the statistics that happen. I mean, 10,000 startups happening or 10,000 startups happening, 4,000 happening. I think you put the culture right. I mean, the biggest, I believe the real entrepreneurs are the people who fight in the army. Because there is nothing called loss and survive. You either die or get it right, okay? I mean, if a brigadier goes for an army battle, you get killed and kill this much of people. So there is a PNL call in that. How do we really get that kind of culture, right, in a safe haven environment like in startup ecosystems, civil society process and everything else? So I think these will play a critical role. The thing that you mentioned is, yes, it's a hard question that we are starting off, but everybody is trying to be great in their own way. But I believe that probably by just bringing in these grades together, you can go far. understand what's happening. And the last point is, only by giving one kind of inputs by talks or presentation may not help. Because every guy who is in his mid-20 will expect three kind of inputs. One is social inputs, because that's trivial. Everybody is cursing you, you're failing, want to. Second is the pedagogic inputs. You may need to look at, I mean, you may have an academic course, you may have a bootcamp model, you may have anything else. But you need also pedagogic inputs. And third is the input that they get in a co-curricular environment, like you are offering to these kids here. Because if you don't give these three kind of inputs, they have a chances that there might be sabotage at any point of time. So when we design this infrastructure processes, last week, I think putting too much of money on buildings of infrastructures and incubation won't help. You put that much of money to build a culture first. If people know how to build it, if people know how to do it, I think they will find out a way of what to sit and what to do. Rather than creating buildings of lakhs of square feet of this thing, if we can change this mindset 1 inch even in the mindset of both policymakers, the executors and the entrepreneurs, I think that 1 inch migration will be much more helpful in the paradigm shift than putting up huge infrastructures and then those things which may not go.
Thank you. Before I go to the right side and pass the mic, it's very, very clear that the panel is becoming more ambitious than before. We are growing as a startup because we said we want to look at Ahmedabad as a startup hub. Soon we became ambitious and we said no, we want to look at it as a world-class startup hub. And we said no, that's not enough. We want to look at it as a great world-class startup hub. And now we say no, even that's not enough. We want to look at it as a great world-class agile startup hub. So when I pass on the mic to the right side, I'm sure demands would be more. And the only interesting aspect of a hub is both a supplier and a demander. For example, the hub and spoke concept came from the airlines. So if you look at a hub, there's a fly-in of the airlines and there's a fly-out of airlines. And this hub plays this wonderful role of mutuality. It supplies as well as it demands. Now we are demanding adjectives, maybe as we move along, we might supply action.
Anything that we want to add? Any question relating to I think we want to have, we'll actually open up the
I think let's audience.
Which, no, it is making a loss of 400 crores, whereas Snapdeal is having a revenue of 154 crores and it is making losses of 264.6 crores. So is it just about starting a startup, or companies are looking forward to profits? Because I see no way that we are going to make profits in next 4 or 5 years. So is it just about starting a startup, or companies are looking for profits?
I think we should not get into company specific for the simple reason because when you reach that stage, you will not have that question. When you start making a profit of 600, 800 crores, sales, I'm saying, not profit, you will not appreciate the question. So let's not get, because strategies change from company to company. Today, if I am a startup and I am doing losses of 100 million, but my top line is at 1,000 million, I really don't care.
So there is a company in Bhuj, fashion ka patka.com, e-commerce company, fashion e-commerce company. They do a revenue of almost 2 crores and they make a lot of profits.
Exactly.
So we can take them as examples.
I'm talking about taxi for sure. So they started with a startup and now it is taken over by Ola. So if I start a startup and I'm taken over by any company, then I'm left alone. Yeah.
I would encourage you, we will support you when you start exactly. And you reach that level, and we will ensure that you also become an Ola or a Uber.
No, if I'm taken over by a company, or if I sell my company to make profits, right? For example, these companies, so they are taken over by, just for Flipkart. If it is taken over by any company, I've got my profit, somebody took my losses. Then it's handed over to another company. It just goes on like this one.
So what exactly is your question?
My question is it about, the companies are making profits or they are just passing over the losses to another companies?
Yeah, let me rephrase the question. One way of rephrasing the question is, what is the purpose of a startup? Startup to startup, because I got some interesting opportunity to invest, not by money. Money is that of the venture capitalist, angel investor, or papa. Okay. Now, other one is it startup to stabilize, grow, and make a mark, or is it startup to stabilize and sell? So that clarity has to be there. And if I say that I am startup to sell, the minute you start up, wait for the customer who will buy and start the next enterprise. So depending on the purpose, and that entrepreneur has to clarify that purpose. In fact, some people say that till the last minute I will not sell. Some people say from minute 1 I sell. I got an idea, somebody came to buy that idea, I sold and made my money. Or I didn't make money. So depending upon what you define. Like that I have a huge top line and no loss, per se is no comment on the enterprise.
I would request that we focus on...
Yeah, you can just finish up then.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so like this, I'm sure I am, definitely. So like this guy asked this question, and my, the spirit of the question lies exactly why this guy had to come up and say. See, we are a maturing startup hub. We are currently about to get delivered as a, mature startup hub in the next couple of years to come now. So we will have a lot of students, who would just come out of the college and would be wanting to start a startup, and maybe people getting enough push that okay, now it's okay to quit the job and start a startup. Okay, so the entrepreneur spirit is getting inculcated slowly and steadily, right? And in the midst of this, what's happening is that people have this notion that there's a triangle: entrepreneurship, startup, and funding. Right? So that notion, I think somewhere is going to mislead a lot of new startup entrepreneurs, first generation entrepreneurs, especially like me and my couple of the guys. So, if the hub can really play a role on clarifying and crystallizing on that thought, that it's not about the funding. It's important part, but it's not just only about the funding. It's going in a way that I am a startup, then I must get funded, then only I am successful. And actually when you get funded, it's a responsibility and your journey of phase 2 actually begins. Because people who are putting $100,000 or $1 million in your venture are going to get an equity, and being a minority stakeholder, they would have their own thought process, and you running the show, you would have your own thought process. Somebody when puts money is expecting some returns on it, right? So that phase 2 is very important, which seems to be missing out totally because it's become sort of a fashion stuff to get funded. And in that entire thought process, right, the whole spirit of starting up, whole spirit of creating value for the society, whole spirit of entrepreneurship and creating employment and creating good product and services fades away. And eventually what happens that it goes to the peak. You might also get funded. It will also come down again eventually. It's a steroid graph or something like that, right? So if maybe all of you or maybe any of you, like Priyanka also touched on that topic initially, that it's not just about the funding, and you have to focus on creating the right product and service, and that's the right idea or the message that should go through each and every startup. So people don't ask questions like that how come Snapdeal and Flipkart gets onto like that. The fact that this kind of questions are coming are the result that the message is not going
what can hub do to create right aspirations for large number of clients?
So I have an example. I mean, we'll just answer this and then come back. When I became a part of this ecosystem 1.5 years back, there was a startup, okay, who got funded. Alright, I agree that a lot of startups that look for funding only, but I would like to make a mention of that startup over here. There's a startup by the name of All Events, which is managed by Amit Panchal. He got funding, he refused funding. Alright, so it's not that there are no startups who are only wanting money. There are startups only who are focusing on their core strength, alright, and their belief in the confidence. Alright, so I know a couple of other startups also who have refused funding because they want to focus on their strength. So I think the myth of that, the moment you get funded, you are successful. That's just the beginning. That's the beginning of the bigger challenge. Alright, because then you have to take care of the expectations of others also. Not only you, alright, and in terms of the ecosystem of Gujarat and Ahmedabad, I feel that our strength is our challenge because everybody over here thinks he's an entrepreneur. Alright, in Gujarat, alright, if you see, nobody wants. I mean, when I see a lot of discussion happening within those service class people, they said, "Hey, इतना time अगर मैं किसी और के लिए खुद का कुछ ना करूँ, खुद का कुछ करना is not a joke." Alright, I would suggest that you should, even if you are good at say programming or coding, you should focus on that. Not necessarily you should get into startup only or become an entrepreneur. Okay, just become a fashion that I am a startup, I am a CEO, I am a founder. Okay, but at the same CEO, Flipkart, the vendors who supply to Flipkart, they themselves are entrepreneurs. Alright, so they have benefited. So I believe that, in fact, a CEO also, a LIC insurance agent, is an entrepreneur. Alright, so everybody should look at such kind of avenues also. Not only that, I have an idea, I have a mobile app, and I get funded, I become a startup. Alright, so I think the ecosystem which is here, okay, that ecosystem, the mentors will actually help that person, alright, to chalk out whether, whether there is fit for that, whether his idea is good or not, and then probably go ahead and move ahead.
And it also depends upon your business model. So what we do is, a lot of startups come, they say that, okay, we're doing this, we are ready to raise money. We will coach them on whether they're ready or not. They might not be ready to take the infusion. How much to raise, when to raise, what to raise, who to raise from. All of this is our job, as an incubator or as an accelerator, to help the entrepreneur figure out, when is the right time to fundraise. See, funding is necessary evil. You might say that, okay, all limits might have been maybe they were funded by someone else. Maybe they were, I don't know the background, but maybe they had a rich, family business that could fund their business. So, funding is necessary evil. Funding also brings, when you have a venture capitalist coming and putting money in your company, it's also a very big signaling evil. Then a lot of doors automatically open up. Also, it brings a lot of operational and fiscal discipline. So I would not say that funding is a bad thing. Of course, that is when your journey begins.
Not the point I'm trying to make. We ourselves looking for funding and we are getting positive traction. So my point is never against that we should not look for funding or it's a bad thing. It's just that the clarity of the thought has to be right. So the newcomers who don't know anything about the system don't get the wrong message that when I'm only a successful entrepreneur when I have a startup that gets funded.
No, see, depends upon the business you're in, right? If it's a lifestyle business, you might not need to raise a venture capital funding, if you're a scale business,
The point, Priyanka, is only this, that really by virtue of the story, aspirations are unnecessarily getting skewed, and therefore, what can the hub do to bring the aspirations in line with?
See, you're right in the sense that, there is a general understanding that if I get more valuation or if I get more funding, it is I'm doing better or I'm more successful. So first of all, there is no standard formula. No standard formula for success of an enterprise. When you're an entrepreneur, everybody has his own way. It's like everybody cannot swim in the same way. Once you jump into the water, it's your way how you swim. You just have to get across. Right? So everybody has his way. But what has incidentally happened is, the people who are swimming in a particular way are impressing us more. That is what is happening. So people are raising more funds, we are finding them more successful. Let me tell you a small thing about myself, just a couple of minutes. In 2010, I sold my company. So I had a company called LinkedIn.org, which was listed in Singapore. I was in Singapore at that time. So I did not tell it then, but now I'm telling you, it was losses, immense losses. Because we were into a lot of things and it was not running okay. So that time the concept of raising funds and this, it was not so prevalent. Few of us, yes, of course, knew who were into the system, but it was not so common like a household term like it is today. I sold it off. I sold it off at a profit. But when I sold it off at a profit, believe me, 2 years after that, I went to the same guy. I said, I want to buy it back. Will you sell it to me? It was still in losses. It was still in losses. You know why? Because just the cost of that domain, just the cost of, leave alone business, leave alone assets, leave alone anything, just the cost of that domain has risen, I don't know how many times, maybe 50, 60 times. Because there's a big mall called Mustafa, somehow they have got registered in this system. So all I'm saying is, this, let me not stage that story so much when anyway running out of time, then we can take it offline if you want to. But the point I'm trying to make is, it is very circumstantial. You see, when Flipkart started, he may not have started by thinking that I'll make it so big, when I sell so many items, I'll sell it to someone and I'll make so. See, its situation is circumstantial. And when you grow, see, we are sitting on the shore and we are saying that how can we swim? Let's read some books and learn swimming. No. To swim, you have to jump into it and then you realize how to swim and how your body responds to it swimming, what is the temperature of the water, how you going to respond to it. So there is no standard way that somebody raises funds, but you are right, this is very common understanding that if I raise more funds, so as a hub, I think we should contribute in making thinking a little more mature in the sense, see, startup is a new phenomenon here, it is not mature so much in our brains, not in everybody's. So, as a hub, it is a responsibility, I would say, to bring that maturity in the minds of at least entrepreneurs, if not everybody, that raising funds is not only criteria of success. See, you have your own criteria of success. If you are doing a social entrepreneurship, your criteria of success may be just the impact. I don't know. If you are running an NGO, your criteria of success may be different. Your way of funding would be different. Your raising funds would be different. You will be self-financing it. I don't know. So there's no standard formula, first of all. So everybody is taking his own path. But yes, we should not be, mesmerized by the way these Flipkarts and all are raising funds. You're right. But yes, as a hub, we have to do something to make this thing again mature. Yeah.
If we want to create a hub, we can spare some government buildings which are not in use, and we can let it to the startup companies so that they would be not that much necessary of finance. Finance need would be reduced. We can create there say common facilities like consultant, CA, HR, etc., data entry, internet, and this would suffice to just say software cases, software startups. But there are other startups also, mechanical, electrical, chemical. So in our GIDC, lots of sheds and premises are not occupied by any of the industries. That could be reused in this. And if starter gets success, they will get rent also. But there should be some common logic arrangement. So that the starter may not have much of the expenditure, but state gets the advantage of the reuse of the properties, and this main idea could be nurtured.
Very well. It has been done. In fact, in Andhra Pradesh, the Chief Minister has written to the municipal commissioners.
Thirdly, IT has traveled to each and every segment of the engineering: civil, electrical, mechanical, chemical. No room is left. No our family life is left except IT. So GTU or this hub should arrange or should see that how IT incorporates to mechanical, electrical, civil, chemical, because we lack in this only. To compete at the international level, we lack this only. So if we can do this, miracle will happen. Miracle can happen. We should do this. That what latest developments are in the field of electrical, mechanical that hub can do or GTU can do. But and it is to be revised every year, because IT and computers are so much dynamic that every year rules are changed, game is changed, and trends are changed. So to have a peace with the time, lag with the time, if we can do this, this is a good suggestion. Thank you.
In case something doesn't happen, the chances of finding the next day are very high. Because even if you do all the best things in the world, there are going to be places in your enterprise where it should not work. So the best thing is that. Second thing is, that's what people are doing. That's what this event happened. That it is creating the bench strength. So a lot of people will join a startup, they might opt out, but at least this is creating a bench strength. So A, you are making the entrepreneur a little better. So chances of he sustaining his success ratio is very high. And on the other side, they are creating a bench strength. And this is where all of us need to come into play. That we create that bench strength. So there has to be so many people who are skillful in a lot of other skills. Someone is good in hardware, someone is good in software, and not just this. There are a lot of the next generation next wave of startups would be integration of a lot of those fields. So a lot of people should be good at. So A, the hub is already at their own level. Everyone. So this is not one single enterprise. Everyone is already has a good, decent success ratio. So it's not that like this is the first time a meeting has happened and we are trying to figure out that something should happen. If you go into all these individual organizations, they have a phenomenal track record of doing something significant. So A, individually everyone is doing. So creating a bench strength and making that person smarter, having a global perspective. So that's why chances of you creating the next wave of amazing startup are very, very high. So that is my opinion. And the good thing about opinions is they can be different.
One more thing is that you can create a one-point contact. Today all these startups waste a lot of time going to different doors, knocking doors, trying to hear solutions over and over again from the same thing. If I come to Icreate, I hear an answer, then I go back to CIIE, I hear the same answer. I go to MICA, I hear the same answer. So I think there should be a one-point contact in between the hub that's flawlessly communicating through all the mediums. If a startup is coming across if a startup is coming across, they should be able to answer it very quickly.
He is the 1.1.
I think that we should have more than 1.2 or more than 1.
Have a vision of making Ahmedabad as a hub, but we are in AC room and thinking that with all these people only we can do it. So my suggestion or my question is to you that what we can actually do.
Turn off the AC.
Our main what we can say the main ideas are from those minds who don't know anything. So we are here at GTU. I am asking to the panel that what we can do actually for those minds who have ideas or who want to do something but they don't know how to.
First, getting associated with at least one of them.
Should we take some questions? Yes. So one thing.
You answer these.
Yeah. So Madhu sir, he mentioned a good thing. I mean, I'll specific to the hub rather than all part. You know, the real challenge is not to create the best practice. The real challenge is how to scale the best practices. So the question that you raised, can the government infrastructures that already exist can be used rather than waiting for a new building for 5 years to come? Because in 5 years the movement will change. Andhra Pradesh Sarkar sent a letter to all municipal commissioners telling that find out at 20,000 square feet of space, give it free of cost to the startup community nearby. The only thing is they need to manage it in a decent manner. And all the municipal commissioners are installed. It happened in November last year. What takes 20 more states to learn from Silicon Valley than Visakhapatnam? That is the real challenge. So what the hub need to do probably is to find out the best nitty-gritty practices happening in and around and pursue the people who have the capacity to implement those things to happen right away at your doorstep. If you take 1 year to implement the best practices within India, then obviously copying Silicon Valley will be a meaningless thing. Second thing, what I mean, as you mentioned that how can things happen in AC room sitting together? Actually, I mean, it is not the question here only. It happened when the Gujarat Startup Support Scheme was drafted. I mean, it was a very, very pity fact that the entire whole was not consulted in a manner in which the entire policy was drafted into it. So if you just talk 5 people and say, hey, what kind of system you need, and draft 4 pages of document and try to implement in the ground level, it doesn't work. So I mean, if you don't interact startups themselves what they need and draft a working paper and say, okay, let's implement it, and that too for a 5 year, whether knowing that they will change in 2 years, is a very contradicting proposition. So my submission is, can the hub become so meticulous? Can the hubs become so important and it become indispensable so that when such type of macro agendas are being drafted, without consulting you people or people who you know, things should not move, otherwise that will create very, very collateral damages in the days to come.
So others should see us as a hub. We ourselves see us as a hub, we are only a friend of ourselves. So one thing you should do is spread a lot of communication. So for example, any event, anything you do spread around with your friend circle outside of Ahmedabad also. Jatin does it a lot, but everybody should.
Yeah, very exciting. We'll wrap it up and bring it to a close and hand it over to Madhu for spreading Madhu. You know, and end of every program we say Madhu, 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 Madhu. So he's there. Now, 3 interesting questions and therefore very interesting responses to that. One is, are we clear about this concept of a startup? Like for example, we say I'm a hub for a startup. And what am I not is also important. And am I a hub for large-scale entrepreneurs who know all the answers to the questions posed by a venture? So to me, the way startup is getting defined has the following connotation. One is, I'm first generation. So I don't know many things about entrepreneurship as a family venture would know. So already there is entrepreneurship in the blood. Therefore, there is a connotation that I am first time, the first generation. The second connotation seems to be I am innovation centric as opposed to imitation centric. Third is I have big aspirations. So therefore, I am a startup. I am a startup on the way to become big on the strength of my innovation and on the strength of my desire to learn, because there are many things which I do not know. Next question was this concept of the hub itself. This hub is a very interesting concept. If to me, as I said, it comes from the airlines, hub and spokes. Hub, there is landing and there is also takeoff. Because if there is no takeoff, there is no requirement of hub, or for that matter, there is no landing. This landing and takeoff bring us what we call mutuality. there's a mutuality between the startup and the hub which is supporting the startup. And the third associated question is, what are these mutualities? And is it possible for us to define these mutualities? Because if we define this mutuality, then the resource requirement of the hub and the resource requirement of the startup or anybody else would be clear. And to me, there are four interesting axes along with this mutuality can be built. One is this axis of education. That is, many people are asking, how do we educate the students that the risk is worth taking? Or how do we educate them to value their ventures in terms of the contribution they make to problem solving? So there are several questions relating to how do we do this as a startup. Therefore, there is a great mutuality in terms of educating each other, because a hub is as much a learner as the startup. See, most of us think that hub has all the answers. That's just a myth. Hub does not have the answers, because hub is a startup all the time. Because with every new venture, there are new questions, and therefore it learns. So that takes me to the next mutuality. That is, how do you do teaching in the hub? Because the startup has to teach the hub, and the hub has to teach the startup. Therefore, how do you extract concepts? How do you rise from the grassroots that, okay, I sold so many new applications to an abstract concept which creates more opportunities for the hub to look for startups. Next is earning, because there is no free lunch. In fact, most of us think that if there is a government policy, there will be government funding. So at times you realize that there is neither government policy nor funding. So best thing to do is that I earn on the strength of my support I provide, because hub is a facilitator. But though it is a facilitator, it needs to provide for opportunities to earn, not only for self, but also for the startup. So therefore, the other axis is the axis of earning. And if I don't earn, there will be a comment that there is a huge top line, and then it's all red all over the place. And fourth and most important to me is the axis of innovation. That is, can we mutually work towards innovation? Now, innovation is not innovation in technologies. In fact, technological innovations are with the startup. But can I innovate around the managerial processes? Innovation in learning teaching, innovation in setting up an enterprise, innovation in cross transfers. So if I am able to take care of, therefore, education and teaching and earning and innovation at a level where I am always concerned with the possibility of touching base with the globe. I can no longer say that I am a local startup. Again, there is a mutuality. The transfer of knowledge, money from the globe to the local hub, and from the local hub to the globe. So if I am able to manage this mutuality and be dynamic all the time, then Ahmedabad can be proud that the seeds of Chota Lal, Chota Lal, have grown into a huge tree to support a large number of nations. Thank you.
So thank you very much. As we are getting late and we need a wrap-up session, I would skip some of the other things. First, as a token of our appreciation, as a token of thanks, we would like to give individually. Daddy, can I request so that I can speak and you can give it?
No, you need not speak. Now you can just give.
All right.
Go ahead and give.
As a token,
Giving something without creating is always welcome.
Thank you very much, Jatin. Next, to Paresh Vora. Thank you very much, Paresh bhai. Appreciate. Thank you, Hiranmay. Thank you, Mihir. Thank you. Thank you, Ihan. And does he get it? Okay.
I am wrapping it up.
Okay. And on behalf of Icreate, it is my honor to give it to you, and thank you very much. With that, let me hand it over to Tyagi to close the day.
Wonderful. I probably need just about 3.5 minutes more. And that's to just quickly wrap up this two-day event, do a bit of ceremonial thank you, but not really ceremonial in the true sense. When we thought of creating this startup fair, this edition for what we said nascent ventures, less than a year, either operating in an incubator or outside, but essentially less than a year. Because we felt the needs are very unique when you are at that stage. The kind of people you need, the stage you are in, what you can afford, what you can extract, elements of mutuality that you kept mentioning, are very different than as you move to the next level. To some extent, I hope we have achieved. We had about 25, 27 ventures who participated. We had about 300 students and aspirants who showed interest either to intern with these projects or actually get employed with these projects. And we also said that let this fair have some other interesting elements. So yesterday we had Professor Jatin and Kaushal and Parul to talk about how to leverage young talent. This morning Madhu and I spent some time on what the society needs to do around them. And we have this very interesting panel. We also got a set of service providers who are interested in providing services to young startups, and we discovered that that's one vacuum. They don't know where to go, and these people don't know how to approach startups. So we believe going forward, if we did this as an annual event, we would be adding value. So what can we have to probably create more of such predictable events year on year and keep improving each time and add greater value. This winter we are going to do one that's for the next level of ventures, those between 2 and 7 years, where not only we get freshers, but we also get people with some amount of work experience, because those ventures can afford to hire people with some amount of experience. So that's going to be our next attempt, and we'll see how it goes.